So it seems like once a year, every couple of years, some kind of new trend comes along with weight loss, right? And the new sort of buzzy one right now is, it used to be Weight Watchers, and now it's Noom. And so I just thought, as a doctor, I would take a look at it. I always want to be known for what I'm for, not what I'm against, but just to look like, okay, what is this thing lacking? What's decent about it? Should you be going down this road when it comes to your health? And so I just signed up for it and downloaded the app and became a member and started to use it because I like to speak to things that I've, begun to use or begin to look at, and seen some very noticeable problems with it and its overall health approach. And I want to show you how you could use this thing potentially if it's like your thing for health, but then know what you're missing to make a more well-rounded approach. The thing that hurts me the most is, as a doctor, when you get healthy, you lose weight. You don't lose weight and then get healthy. And there are so many ways to lose weight, but that doesn't equate to a healthier human being. We're a skinnier person on medications. We're a skinnier person still eating toxic food. We are a lighter casket at the end of the day. It's a harsh way to say it. Now, if you are using this and this helping you on your journey, that's amazing. Just make sure you don't miss the key components. But let's take a look. We can travel around the actual app ourselves. So here we are right in the main section of it. And I've got, a little daily dose of laughter. The app itself is very quality. It's really well designed aesthetically. So I liked that. It took me about 15 minutes of answering a lot of quiz questions. So I was kind of curious of how that's going to customize it. Seems to be they get a lot of information up front, but then it doesn't quite give you really, really specific regimen for you. It's a bit still more generic. And the concept of it is this: it's featured at the top. It's let's count your calories. Okay. And counting calories is a way to lose weight, right? If you take in and eat less than you burn that day, you're going to lose weight. It's, are you healthy at the end of the day? And there are so many of these calorie counting programs out there. That's why that's a swear word around Dr. Livingood, that you can eat unhealthy things. And so I just started to dig in, and the first sign I can tell by looking into something is how do they handle sugars, insulin, and bad oils. That's what I'm always looking at, because there's overwhelming research in all the books that I've written, and I've done a lot of videos on it, of how toxic a vegetable oil or soybean oil. And so you can eat those things and still have it be low calorie, but they're so bad for you in the long run. So that's one of the main things I go after right when I get in here. It doesn't look like it has actual workouts for you either. You're kind of left in your own demise to do that part. So it's very nutritional focused, even though health is a lot of pillars. There's a lot of foundations. We'll talk about that as we go. But let's take a look here. Head on up. We got messages. We got progress. There's a library. There's a course progress. They do a good job, and they're kind of their whole thing is like changing your habits. But the habits are going to mostly be around the nutritional side of it. But the main focus is like, okay, let's change your habits. I love that piece of it. I love that, yes, we need to change habits and lifestyles, not just lose weight. You'll get longer term real lifestyle change, but what are we changing into? So when you look at, can we just go to recipes here? And so I go down through, there's a lot of these things look delicious. Like I would make stir fry, I make that all the time. But my question is, this takes 30 minutes. It's 406 calories per serving. But if I go to the instructions, what are we going to be using for ingredients? Right out of the gates, I'm seeing reduced sodium soy sauce. That's fine, but I would rather use Bragg's, because then we avoid it altogether. We get non-GMO forms of soy sauce, non-GMO soybeans, and it's got a way healthier fermentation to it. Number 2, rice wine vinegar. I think you could avoid that altogether, or use an ACV even. We're using cornstarch. We like to avoid any sort of cornstarch, corn altogether, because of its high GMOs. Then we have vegetable oil. That's going to be a rancid form of oil. So I already know the people making these, it's only focused on lowering calories. One number, if it meets that criteria, it can go into your system. So what this starts to translate into is then you start eating foods with sugar-free, right? We get aspartame, we get toxins, we get NutraSweets. That shows up in a lot of products that are okay on diet plans like this. You start eating things with really high protein amounts and low amounts of calories. And so there's muscle milks and certain bars, yet they're loaded, right, with either toxic foods or alternative fake sugars. They're loaded with bad oils or unclean sources of protein. So now you're putting these foods in, you're meeting your calorie count, but at what cost with all the toxin load that you're putting on? That's why when people stop these type of things, they put on a lot of bad foods, because now they're in between. They thought they could have all these different foods that they wanted, but they never really addressed the true driver of weight, which is insulin. And this is proven through diabetics, right? If you don't have enough insulin, you can't produce it. You're a type 1 diabetic. And type 1 diabetics left untreated get rail skinny. like deathly skinny. We saw this a lot before the invention of really injectable insulin. Type 2 diabetics have a complete sensitivity to it. So the pancreas is kicking it out, but it takes more and more and more and more in order to try to respond on all of the insulin spiking foods that you are eating. And so this is where it becomes a problem that's proven that the diabetes explosion, the metabolic condition explosion, weight gain, blood pressure, cholesterol, it's driven by insulin and how the body handles it. So the promotion of a lot of small meals keeps insulin high all day. The promotion of toxic fats or foods like cornstarches that we're not paying attention to its insulin impact puts us into a state where we stay insulin resistant. That leads to metabolic disease. So yes, your calories go down, but your blood pressure goes up. So what I did is I downloaded the actual food guides. And so this is their green food list, which they say these are foods that are good to eat because they're lower calorie. But we can see right out of the gates, we have bananas and cherries. These significantly spike your insulin levels. That's not a problem if your weight is in check and you don't have any medications, you don't have metabolic conditions, but not good if you're dealing with this insulin struggles, which most Americans are. Then we go to grains. They allow us to have corn tortillas and noodles and muffins and pasta. These are really going to spike. Now, these are fine if you can learn how to make them with healthy alternatives like bean noodles or garbanzo beans. But if we're just putting these in general, we're spiking insulin a lot. Then we get into some of the vegetables. These are fine. They do allow potatoes, which are going to really spike the insulin levels. So you can see a lot of issues. They allow tofu, even though it's really high in genetically modified soy. So there's many issues with it. Now when you go to the other side, this is the orange list. These are the foods they say stay away from. These are going to be just calorie dense and they're not going to be what you want inside of your system. Orange category foods are the most caloric dense and have the least healthy nutrients. But then when I go to the list, least healthiest nutrients, nuts are on the list. Almonds are one of the best sources of magnesium you could put into your mouth. Seeds, pumpkin seeds are absolutely loaded with things like zinc and other incredibly helpful nutrients, yet they're on here of not having nutritional value. A great alternative to regular bacon might be turkey bacon, and that's on here if you'd like to enjoy that still. So butter is an incredibly good source of healthy fat. So by doing this, you said that fat is not an important nutrient, although every cell in our body is surrounded by fat and our brain is made up of 60% fat. So obviously you can see that I became biased very quickly because when I look at it, I might get a dose of laughter. I might get these nice aesthetics. I might be able to message, maybe a coach on here and get some kind of question, right? And I got this big list of recipes and I'm counting my calories and I can track some of my progress. However, this ends up being a lot of planning and then a lot of, restriction and tracking, and we can make weight loss progress, but do we actually become healthy over time? And so I would rather focus on real food, real nutrients, focus on complete health. And it needs 5 parts, okay? Number 1, we've got to have a focus on actually building real health, which means we've got to pay attention to medications would be unhealthy. They can drive a health result. They can drive a number. They could drive weight loss. They could drive blood pressure, but it has side effects and makes you toxic. We can count calories, but if we're eating toxic foods, then we don't have the full picture. So we've got to focus on building health. That's rule number 1. That's focus number 1. Now that also goes along with decreasing your stress, having gratitude, which they have a little bit in there about it, and tracking, working on your breathing, working on your sleep, okay? So that mental health side of it's got to be number 1. That's what's going to drive the results and the habits to come. Number 2, we want to eat real food and focus on fixing our foods, but we need all of the food groups to be in balance and we start to understand shopping, reading labels, what is real food and what isn't, especially when it comes to fats, okay? Then the fitness side of it, you can upgrade and purchase, but it costs you several $100s a year. And then there's additional add-ons to get the actual workouts. Well, that guidance and that ease and that convenience is very important of just quickly getting a workout in each day. 10 minutes is all I think it takes to do that. That's fixing your fitness. Then fixing your filters, something not addressed at all. What about the toxicity? What about the plastics in your life? What about the chemicals you're taking in with artificial sweeteners? What about the chemicals in your air or what's in your deodorant? There's a whole other aspect of health there that are creating a lot of problems for a lot of you that doesn't get addressed in a program like that. Then finally, we're going to fix your frame. And that's, what about your bad knee? Or what about your inflamed shoulder or your migraine headaches? Or there's some rehab that needs to be done with the body. So to call this like a complete health program, it's very far from it. There's 5 foundational aspects that need to be addressed. But when you start piecing this together, you're going to need 2 or 3 other apps to get that all together. So those 5 foundations, right? I break those down in my book. You can get a good understanding with them. I don't have a competitive thing with Noom. I do, however, do live coaching every single month in a private Facebook group to help people implement implement those 5 foundations because they're not mine. They're just the way that our bodies are made. If we don't address all 5, we can miss some major areas of health. And then we have our nutrition right, or we have the scale right, but we have our unhealthy habits way off. And so it needs to be a well-rounded approach, not just counting calories, not just lighter caskets, not omitting healthy foods because of their calorie count. We need to focus on everything when it comes to health. So if it were me, Noom would not be passing the Dr. Livingood test, not to speak poorly on someone. If you use it and you are having good results, that's fantastic. Just make sure you're addressing unhealthy foods, even when they're low in calories, and these other aspects of health have to be addressed. So there's your honest review of a doctor reacting to another health program craze of Noom. And the word program is outlawed around me because I think what you really need is a lifestyle to learn how to shop, to learn how to read a label, to learn how to cook your own food, to learn how to do exercise on your own each day, to learn how to sleep better, to control your stress and your environments. Those are lifestyle habits for your specific world. That's what I'm interested in equipping people to do, not a dependence on a program. So there it is. If you need help with the next step, I put a link for my book down below that breaks down the 5 foundations so you can get a start in your world, in your life, to doing exactly that. And if you really are focusing on weight loss, insulin's got to be addressed. Long term, it has to be addressed. I did a whole training on how to lose weight and control insulin. I put that as your next video right here.